He begged me to co-sign a loan, said it was life or death. I trusted him, because he was family. 2 months later. So was he. Then I saw his wife smiling in a grand opening post. Same dream, just without me. That's when I found the email that changed everything. I thought he needed help. But the truth? It broke something I can never get back. I used to tell people I didn't have siblings, but that wasn't really true. I had Marco. He was technically my cousin, but we grew up more like brothers. He lived 4 blocks away, and most weekends we were either at my house playing PlayStation or at his, lighting tiny things on fire in his backyard with a magnifying glass. He always had this fearless way about him. Even when we were 10 and I got hit with a bad asthma attack at the park, left my inhaler at home, started panicking, wheezing hard, he didn't flinch. Took off sprinting. That boy ran 2 miles in humid August heat to my place and back while I sat trying not to black out on a bench. He handed me my inhaler with this cocky little grin and said, "Told you not to forget it." That moment stuck with me. Like, seared into my brain. He didn't wait. He didn't ask. He just ran. No hesitation. Life took us in different directions after high school. I went to college, got into finance, ended up at a consulting firm. Marco stayed back, floated between kitchens, and eventually opened his own restaurant, kind of a fusion diner with this Cuban-American twist. I visited when I could. Even helped him build a website back when he first launched it. He'd joke that I wore a suit while he wore grease-stained aprons, but I could always feel that same old bond underneath. So when he called me out of the blue, voice tight and fast, I didn't think twice about answering. It was a Tuesday night. I remember because I was meal prepping chicken breast and broccoli, half listening to some podcast about investing. He said, "I'm gonna be real with you, man. I need help." I stopped chopping. The way he said it, no pride, no setup, just dropped the words like weights. He told me rent had tripled on the space. One of his suppliers ghosted him mid-contract. There were delays, refunds, headaches. A storm of bad luck. He said, "I'm not asking for a handout. Just need a cosigner for this bridge loan. It's short-term. I've got projections, man. I just need someone on paper to keep the doors open." I hesitated. I really did. Not because I didn't want to help, but because loans aren't just ink on paper. If they go bad, they drag you down with them. And this one wasn't small. 35,000. Enough to hurt if it went south. I asked questions. He downplayed everything. Said the loan officer was cool with the numbers, just needed a second signature to push it through. Told me, "You're not gonna have to pay a dime. Worst case, I break even. Best case, we're back in the black in 6 months." It felt shaky. But then I thought about that day on the bench. The way he ran for me without being asked. No second thoughts. Just action. Maybe I owed him this. Or maybe I wanted to believe he was still that guy, still the one who'd show up, no matter what. So I signed. We sat in a bank office with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Marco cracked jokes with the loan officer, then slapped my back like we just pulled off a heist. Said, "You won't regret this." But the way he said it, too smooth. Like he was already on to the next thing. And something in me, not loud, just faint, whispered, "You're gonna regret this." But I ignored it. Because we were family. And family doesn't screw you. Right? Right? At first, I told myself it was just a rough patch. Businesses go through those, right? Especially restaurants. It's a tough industry. Margins are razor thin, one bad month turns into 3, and suddenly you're juggling payroll with overdue invoices. I convinced myself that Marco just needed space to work it out. He'd call when things stabilized. But weeks went by. And every time I texted, I'd get these weirdly vague replies. "Busy day, man. Just grinding." Or, "It's turning around, just gotta push through." No numbers. No details. No updates. Just empty reassurances. I started to feel it in my chest, that creeping tightness. Not the kind from asthma, but the kind you get when you know you've screwed up and you're waiting for the consequences to find you. Then the first call from the bank came. I remember because I was in line at Target, about to pay for detergent and socks. The guy on the phone was polite, too polite, like he'd said these same words 100 times that day. He asked if I was aware that the last payment on the loan was 2 weeks late. I said, no, I wasn't. I felt my mouth go dry. He said, "You're listed as the cosigner. You'll be liable if the borrower defaults." That night I called Marco. Straight to voicemail. Texted him, "Hey, the bank just called me. What's going on?" "Nothing." Waited a day. Sent another, "Marco. This is serious. Call me." Still nothing. I wasn't worried anymore. I was pissed. I tried his wife. No answer. Tried his restaurant. The line just rang and rang. I even drove by one night after work, just to see if he was there. The place was closed. Dark. A handwritten sign taped to the door said, "Closed for maintenance." I should have known then. Should have recognized the smell of something rotting. My phone started ringing more. The bank again. Late fees now. The loan was over 45 days delinquent. They offered a payment plan, for me. Not him, for me. I started making payments. Just enough to keep the calls at bay. Not because I wanted to bail him out anymore, but because my credit was on the line. My name. Around that time, word started leaking through the family. My aunt called, all hushed concern, like someone had died. Asked, "You really co-signed that loan?" I said, "Yeah." She sighed, long and slow, like she'd been holding it in. "Honey, you know how Marco is." No. I didn't know how Marco was. I thought I did. A few cousins made little jabs when I showed up at a cookout. One of them laughed, "Damn, bro. That's what you get for playing banker." Another just said, "Could have told you that was a bad idea." That was the worst part. Not the money. Not the silence. The shame. That quiet, isolating kind that wraps around you when you realize everyone else saw something you didn't. Eventually, Marco texted back. Just one line. "We all lost here." No apology. No explanation. Just those 5 cold words like a final door slamming shut. I stared at that message for 10 full minutes. Reread it again and again. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I felt hollow. Like I'd been standing in a room that was slowly flooding, and I didn't notice until the water hit my neck. I wasn't just on the hook. I was alone with it. At first, I tried to let it go. Told myself it was done, and I just needed to accept it. Chalk it up to a bad bet on someone I used to know. I was already making payments, already rebuilding my credit bit by bit. But the thing about betrayal, real betrayal, is that it doesn't just empty your bank account. It keeps clawing at your brain, whispering that something still isn't right. That whisper got louder when I ran into Jared. He's a mutual friend, someone who used to bartend with Marco back in the day. We bumped into each other at a bar downtown, and after a few minutes of small talk, he leaned in and said, "Hey, I saw Marco the other week. His new spot looks slick, huh?" I froze mid-sip. "New spot?" He nodded. "Yeah, that place over in Echo Ridge. Little Latin fusion joint. His wife's running front of house. Food solid." Didn't know he was already back in the game. I stared at him like he'd just told me Marco joined the CIA. I said, "You sure it was him?" He laughed. "Bro. I've known Marco 15 years. Of course I'm sure." I drove home on autopilot. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. The second I walked in, I sat on my couch, pulled up Instagram, and typed in his wife's name. There it was. Post after post. Bright plates of food. Smiling guests. Stories tagged at a new restaurant called La Cosecha. Soft launch photos. Balloons. A ribbon cutting. Her in a sleek black dress, holding a pair of scissors. Marco standing behind her, clapping. My stomach dropped. The opening date. Just 2 months after he defaulted on the loan I co-signed. That's when I lost whatever shred of denial I had left. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't a victim of inflation or shady suppliers. This was calculated. I opened the Secretary of State's business registry. Took maybe 2 minutes to find it. La Cosecha LLC. Registered under her name. Filed exactly 2 weeks after he'd come to me begging for help. I felt something cold wash over me. Not anger yet. Not even betrayal. Just this eerie, nauseating clarity. Like seeing a car accident in slow motion and realizing you were the one standing on the tracks the whole time. And suddenly, all those little moments I'd ignored started to reappear. His easy confidence in the bank office. The rushed way he pushed the papers toward me. How relieved he seemed, not grateful, but like a man who had just offloaded weight. He never intended to fix the old restaurant. He was moving on. Pivoting. Wiping the slate clean without telling me he was using my name to do it. I kept thinking about that one text, "We all lost here." No, Marco. You didn't lose. You just left the mess with me and opened a new shop with a fresh name. He didn't lose the business. He just left it behind, in my name. I sat on the idea for a few days. Turned it over in my mind like a blade I wasn't sure I wanted to pick up. I kept hoping there was something I hadn't seen, some explanation that would make it hurt less. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I was the one spinning stories out of anger. But I knew better. So one Thursday afternoon, I drove to La Cosecha. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't even text Marco first. Just got in my car and made the half-hour drive across town, past the strip malls and half-finished condos, into this gentrified little stretch lined with wine bars and artisanal donut shops. The place was nice. Too nice. Glass storefront. Reclaimed wood sign. Patio seating with string lights already hung in tidy loops. It looked like money. Looked like someone had done their research, picked the right demographic, timed the launch just so. I walked in and sat at the bar. The guy behind it gave me a menu. I ordered a drink, bourbon, neat, and waited. I had no idea what I was going to say. I just knew I had to see his face. 10 minutes later, he came through the side hallway, wiping his hands on a towel, talking to someone behind him. And when he saw me sitting there, he stopped mid-sentence. Then he smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not an oh shit kind of smile. A practiced one. Polished. He walked over and said, "Didn't expect to see you here." I looked up at him and said, "Yeah. I figured." He leaned on the bar. "You came all this way for lunch?" I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. "No. I came to ask when you were planning on telling me about this place." His expression didn't even flicker. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone, tapped the business filing, and slid it across the bar toward him. "You formed the LLC 2 weeks after I co-signed your loan." 2 weeks. He stared at the screen for a beat, then shrugged. That was her idea. She wanted to try something new. I didn't think it was relevant. I laughed, bitter and low. "You didn't think it was relevant that while you were defaulting on a loan with my name on it, you were opening a brand new restaurant under your wife's?" He straightened up. "You said you believed in me." I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I kept my voice calm, but my hands were shaking. "I believed you were trying to save your business. I didn't know you were just setting it on fire so you could walk away clean." Marco looked at me for a long moment. Then something in his face changed, like a mask coming off. He leaned in closer and said, "No one forced you to sign that loan, man. You offered. You wanted to be the hero. You wanted to swoop in and save the day." I stared at him. "So this was just strategy. You figured you'd let the old place crash, and I'd carry the debt while you started fresh." He didn't answer. Didn't have to. The silence between us was enough. I said, "You could have told me. You could have asked me to be part of this. I might have said yes. But you lied. You used me." He smirked. "Look, it was a bad situation. I did what I had to do. You don't understand what it's like, running a place. The pressure. The bills. The employees. You sit behind a desk, man. You don't get it." That was it. That line, that casual dismissal, like I was some suit who couldn't possibly understand the weight of real work, that's what broke me. I stood up, left cash for the drink, and looked him dead in the eyes. "You're not who I thought you were." He didn't flinch. Just said, "Yeah, well, neither are you." I walked out into the sunlight feeling like I'd just clawed my way out of something toxic. Not because he yelled. He never raised his voice. He wasn't angry. He was done pretending. And that somehow made it worse. I didn't tell anyone about the confrontation. Not my parents. Not my coworkers. Not even my closest friends who'd asked me a few times if I ever got the money back. I just let it rot in silence, like a wound I didn't want anyone to see. But even after walking out of La Cosecha, even after hearing him say those words to my face with no guilt in his voice, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop rewinding it all in my head, trying to figure out how far back it really went. There's a kind of pain that comes with betrayal, but there's another layer underneath that, a sickening curiosity. That need to know how deep the lie ran. I started digging. I went back through emails, texts, even old PDFs he'd sent during the loan process. I wasn't looking for closure. I think I just wanted to punish myself a little more. To really understand how badly I'd been played. That's when I found the spreadsheet. It was buried in an old forwarded email from Marco, sent a few days before we signed the loan. At the time, I barely glanced at it. Just saw numbers, a few buzzwords, and let it slide. But this time, I opened it properly, looked at the file info. The original document name wasn't what he renamed it to. It wasn't 2022 restaurant recovery budget. It was La Cosecha budget draft V1. My stomach dropped. He hadn't just used my name. He'd used it to fund his next move. The loan wasn't to save the business he said was sinking. It was to help him walk away from the wreck while laying the foundation for something new, something shinier, more marketable, and completely free of the debt he dumped on me. And the worst part? I was never meant to know. I couldn't sleep that night. My thoughts were running in tight, ugly circles. What was real? That call where he said, "I need help." The worried tone in his voice. The spreadsheet he pretended was about salvaging the old place. It wasn't desperation. It was strategy. He knew exactly how to pitch it to me. Exactly how much of the truth to tell to make the lie stick. He wrapped it in memories and that one story I never forgot, the day he ran home to get my inhaler. I'd held on to that like gospel. But even that memory, that got tainted. Because now I couldn't help wondering, did he remember it the way I did? Or was it just a tool? A story he knew I'd carry like a scar. The next morning, I ran into Jared again, the mutual friend who first told me about the new place. I asked him, casually, how long Marco had been talking about La Cosecha. He didn't even hesitate. Oh man, way before it opened. Like, last year. I remember him saying he was done with the old spot. He wanted something upscale. Something clean. Said he was gonna let the lease run out and build something that actually made money. Last year? I asked. He nodded. At his wife's birthday, I think. He was already talking with investors. So there it was. Months before that call, months before he ever told me the place was struggling, he was already done with it. He just hadn't told me. Because he needed me to believe the story. He needed someone who still saw him as the guy who once ran 2 miles just to help. And that someone was me. I didn't co-sign a loan. I co-signed a lie. After that, I stopped returning calls from relatives. My aunt sent a long text that started with, "Families fight," and ended with, "He's trying his best." I never opened it. Another cousin met me something about how Marco was under a lot of pressure. I blocked him. Pressure? Please. He had a launch party 2 months later. He had wine tastings, press coverage, and a soft opening with influencers tagging the place on Instagram. Meanwhile, I was getting collection letters in the mail. My credit's still wrecked. I'm on a repayment plan with a financial advisor, slowly crawling out from under it. I had to cancel a vacation I'd been planning for a year. Took a hit on a mortgage refi. All of it, just, collateral damage from trusting the wrong person. But that's the thing. I didn't just trust Marco. I trusted the version of him I built in my head, the one who never would have done this. The one who didn't exist. And that's the part that hurts the most. Not what he did. It's how long I kept believing he wouldn't. He's not my family anymore. And maybe he never really was. But I'm done carrying his mess. I deleted the last voice memo he sent, didn't even listen. The preview read, "Sorry it ended this way. I hope someday." I held down the file, pressed delete, watched it vanish. No reply. No closure. Just silence. Because some people don't deserve to be explained. They just deserve to be forgotten.